Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. I always knew I was different. Ever since I was a child, I felt like an outsider among the people who shared my blood. Everything in my family revolved around the restaurant, from dinner table conversations to future plans that I was never asked about. But one thing was clear. I did not belong in that world. My name is Emma, and I was born into a family that owns a long-standing Italian restaurant in New York. My father, Richard, is a tough man, his voice always booming like thunder, running the restaurant with an iron fist. He doesn't believe in weakness. There is no room for hesitation or daydreaming in his world. My mother, Diane, is a strong, resourceful woman who stands by my father's side, managing everything from the staff to every single dish that leaves the kitchen. To her, family isn't just about blood. It's an empire she and my father built together. And then there's Ethan, my older brother, the golden child of the family. Since childhood, Ethan was destined to inherit the restaurant, and he embraced that role with absolute pride. He was the perfect copy of my father, strong, decisive, ambitious. He loved the restaurant, loved running it, loved the recognition he got from our parents. And me? I was just an outsider, the daughter who was always treated as if she didn't quite belong. I didn't hate the restaurant. I liked the smell of freshly baked bread in the morning, the way the neatly set tables glowed under the warm golden lights. But I didn't love it the way my family did. I didn't enjoy spending my evenings helping in the kitchen, didn't care for the endless debates my parents had about expanding the menu, and I certainly didn't appreciate being constantly pressured to learn to love the business. I loved plants. I cherished quiet afternoons in the backyard where I could lose myself in the refreshing greenery, running my fingers over soft leaves, feeling the peace they brought. I was fascinated by books on botany, landscape design, and how people could turn an empty patch of land into a thriving paradise. But no one in my family understood that. Every dinner was a silent battle. "Emma, you can't keep living with your head in the clouds," my mother said, slamming her fork down on the table. "You need to be realistic. You're part of this family, and that means you have a responsibility to the restaurant." My father nodded, his voice ringing with an authority that left no room for argument. "Ethan is ready to take over, but the restaurant needs you too, Emma. We're a family. You can't keep running away from this." Ethan smirked, his voice laced with mockery. "Don't bother, Dad. Emma cares more about her plants than she does about real work." I tightened my grip on my fork but said nothing. I was used to comments like that. There was only one person in my family who truly understood me, Grandma Margaret. She lived in a small house on the outskirts of town, where she had the most beautiful garden I had ever seen. She never forced me to be someone I wasn't whenever I visited. She would welcome me with open arms and a gentle smile. "Everything in this world has its own place," she once told me when I was little, her aged hands gliding over the lavender plants. "People dream, as long as you know where you belong, you will find your path." I had always held on to those words, but as I grew older, the pressure from my family only intensified. I couldn't avoid it forever. The time would come when I had to make a choice: stay trapped in the cage my parents built for me or find a way to break free. The problem was I wasn't sure if I was ready. I always knew this moment would come. I just didn't expect it to come so soon. That evening, the air in the house was as thick as the grease in the restaurant's kitchen. I sat across from my parents while Ethan leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, watching with anticipation. Dinner went on as usual, but I knew what was coming next would change everything. My father set his knife down on his plate, his eyes locking onto mine. "Emma, have you given serious thought to your future?" I swallowed hard. This was it. Taking a deep breath, I clenched the napkin in my hands before looking up to meet his gaze. "I have, Dad, and I've made my decision. I will be working at the restaurant. I want to study landscape design." Silence. A long, heavy silence that stretched longer than necessary. My father frowned as if he couldn't believe what he had just heard. "Landscape? What?" My mother set her fork down, concern flickering in her eyes. Ethan let out a dry chuckle, leaning forward as if he had just heard the worst joke ever. "So what, you're going to make a living planting trees?" I gritted my teeth. "It's not just planting trees, Ethan. It's about transforming ordinary spaces into gardens, parks, and beautiful resorts." I love nature. I love the way people and greenery can coexist. That's what I want to do. My father's eyes darkened, and he slammed his palm on the table, making the glasses rattle. His voice cut through the air like a blade, sharp and absolute. Do you seriously think this is a real career? A real job? Do you have any idea how many years this family has worked to build this restaurant? Do you know how many people would kill for the opportunity to inherit it? I clenched my fists. But I'm not one of them, Dad. I don't love the restaurant the way you and Ethan do. I can't spend my life in a place where I don't belong. Mom blinked anxiously but said nothing. Ethan, on the other hand, burst out laughing. Oh, Emma, you're so naive. Do you really think someone is going to pay you to play in the dirt and mess around with plants? Do you think you're going to be some famous garden designer one day? Anger boiled inside me. I don't need you to believe in me. I'll prove it. Dad crossed his arms, his eyes darkening. Then prove it on your own. I stared at him, waiting for him to say more. There's no way your mother and I are paying for you to chase this ridiculous dream. You're rejecting this family, you're rejecting our support too.
No tuition, no rent.
His words fell like a sentence passed down in court. Mom turned away slightly, but she didn't protest. Ethan was still smirking as if everything was going exactly how he expected. A sharp pain struck my chest, but I refused to let them see me break. I nodded, keeping my voice steady even as my hands trembled. Fine, I'll take care of myself. I stood up, pulled my chair away from the table, and walked off without looking back. I had no idea where I would go or how I would survive, but I knew one thing. I wasn't turning back. That night I packed my things, trying to keep my tears from falling as each familiar item was quietly tucked away into my suitcase. As I zipped up my backpack, my phone buzzed with a message from Grandma Margaret. Come to my house. You'll always be welcome here. I took a deep breath. Maybe I wasn't completely alone. The next morning, I left my parents' house with a small suitcase and a lump in my throat. I didn't look back. There was no other way. I had chosen my own path. Grandma Margaret's house sat in the suburbs, about an hour's drive from the city. When I arrived, she was already waiting for me on the porch, her gentle face filled with understanding. No scolding, no unnecessary questions. She simply opened her arms and pulled me into a warm embrace. You're going to be okay, Emma, she whispered. I believe in you. Those simple words were the only validation I needed. Starting a new life without my parents' financial support was far from easy. I worked part-time at a small plant nursery to cover my expenses while focusing on my college applications. I wanted to study landscape design, but even after making my decision, fear still lingered. Was I good enough? Was I making a mistake? Then the acceptance letter arrived. I did it. Walking onto campus for the first time felt like stepping into an entirely different world. No more the greasy scent of the restaurant, no more my parents' disapproving stares, or Ethan's mocking tone. Here, everyone was passionate about something, and for the first time I realized I wasn't alone. On my first morning, as I struggled to find my classroom, a voice called out behind me. Move it, freshman. I turned just in time to catch a flash of fiery red curls before a girl nearly barreled into me, almost knocking the papers out of my hands. Damn, sorry about that, she laughed, quickly studying me. I'm Madison, second-year landscape design major. You're new, aren't you? Before I could answer, she grabbed my arm. Come on, walk with me. Don't just stand here like a lamppost, or you'll get eaten alive. Madison was like a whirlwind, pulling me into a world bursting with color and energy. She was passionate about plants, about every design, about every idea around her. I found myself feeling less anxious. The coursework wasn't easy. It required hours of study. But from researching soil composition to sketching blueprints, from understanding eco-systems to applying artistic principles to green spaces. Every night I buried myself in books, staying up late to complete assignments. But unlike the days when I was forced to work at the restaurant, now every moment of learning felt meaningful. And then I met Professor Bennett, the man who changed my life. Professor Bennett was in his 50s, with salt and pepper hair and piercing eyes. He wasn't one to give compliments lightly, but one day, after I presented my garden design project, he paused, studying it intently before nodding. There's something here, he said, his voice calm yet certain. The way you use space, the way you blend colors, This isn't just a drawing. It has emotion. I was stunned. No one had ever spoken about my work like that before. You have talent, Emma. Don't waste it. Work even harder. Those words ignited a new fire in my veins. I started doing more studying, more experimenting. Madison and I became a perfect team for group projects. Gradually, other professors began to notice me too. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was truly walking my own path. I was no longer Ethan's shadow, no longer the dreamy child in my parents' eyes. I was Emma Walker, and I was becoming a landscape designer. I don't remember when my phone slipped from my hands. Aunt Laura's message, my mother's younger sister, still glowed on the screen. Emma, Grandma Margaret has passed away. Come home immediately. My world shattered in that instant. I bolted out of my dorm, barely registering Madison's voice calling after me. My mind was blank, my heartbeat frantic as I hailed a cab home. Grandma Margaret was the only person in my family who had ever stood by me. When my parents turned their backs, she was the one who welcomed me with open arms. When I doubted my path, she was the first to tell me I could do it, and now she was gone. Suddenly, cruelly, when I arrived at her house, Aunt Laura was already there, along with some other relatives. The house I once called my sanctuary now felt eerily quiet. I stepped into the backyard where Grandma and I had spent countless afternoons tending to every flower bed, every branch. But today no one was there. Only the wind rustled through the lavender rows, carrying an emptiness that ached deep inside me. The funeral passed in silence. I stood by her grave, my hands cold, my heart heavy. There were no words to express this pain. But then, as if fate refused to leave me alone, something else happened. Something inevitable. Grandma Margaret's will was read, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She had left this house to me. I looked up, almost expecting someone to say this was a mistake, but the lawyer simply confirmed it in a calm, steady voice. Margaret wanted Emma to have this house along with the entire garden. That was her final wish. The room tensed immediately. My mother, Diane, went pale. My father, Richard, clenched his fists. Ethan, as always, laughed. This is unbelievable. My mother spoke first, her voice trembling with an, "This house belongs to the family. There is no way Mom would leave it to her." The lawyer remained composed. I understand this is difficult to accept, but this was Margaret's decision. All legal documents are in order. My father's voice hardened. This house could be sold for a great price. That money could help us open another restaurant. He turned to me, his gaze sharp as a blade. "Emma, you can't keep it. It means nothing to you." My heart pounded. He was wrong. This house meant more to me than anything in the world. Ethan leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "Be honest, Emma. What are you going to do with it? Plant more trees." He scoffed. "What a waste." I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "I'm keeping it." My mother turned to me, eyes blazing. "You can't be serious." I met her gaze. "I'm completely serious. This was Grandma's home, and I'm keeping it just as she wanted." Silence blanketed the room. My father abruptly stood, shoving his chair back. "If that's your decision, don't expect any help from us." I clenched my fists under the table. I was used to that threat, I never expected it. Ethan smirked, but this time I didn't care. They could be angry. They could look down on me, but I knew I was doing the right thing. I would turn this house into something special. Not for them, but for Grandma Margaret, for the dream I was chasing. I had lost the most important person in my life, but I wouldn't lose myself. A wedding invitation sat neatly on the table, golden embossed under the warm light. "Ethan Walker and Olivia Carter cordially invite you to celebrate our special day." I stared at the words, feeling a mix of unfamiliarity and bitterness. Ethan was getting married. A part of me wasn't surprised. He had always been the one who had everything handed to him, from our parents' favoritism to success in the business world. I hadn't seen my family since Grandma Margaret's will was read, and now they were sending me this invitation. I almost threw it away, but then I stopped. Why should I be the one to hide? I had built my own career. The city park I designed had been featured in multiple magazines, and my community garden project had become a local landmark. I was no longer the girl my family once mocked. If I was going, it wouldn't be to blend into the background. It would be to prove to myself that I had stepped out of their shadow. So I decided to attend. The wedding was held in one of the most luxurious venues in New York, extravagant and opulent, just like the life Ethan had always chased. I walked in, my pale blue dress hugging my figure, my hair neatly pinned up, exuding a confidence I had never carried before. I passed through rows of elegantly set tables, the lively chatter filling the air. But as I approached the family area, an awkward silence settled. My mother, Diana, was the first to speak, her voice as cold as I remembered. "Emma, didn't think you'd actually come." I smirked. "Didn't think I'd be invited." Ethan stood next to his new bride, Olivia, a beautiful woman with eyes that held a distinct air of arrogance. She looked me up and down before tilting her head. Her voice was sweet but laced with condescension. "Emma, right? I've heard so much about you from Ethan. I suppose you're still busy with your little plants." I gave her a small knowing smile. "Yes, except now those little plants are landing me multi-million-dollar contracts and magazine covers." I sighed. Olivia's eyes narrowed slightly, but she quickly masked it with a composed expression. Ethan let out a dry chuckle. "Really funny. I always pictured you still wandering around Grandma's garden pulling weeds." I tightened my grip on my wine glass but kept my smile. "Oh, I've done a lot more than that. But I guess you haven't been keeping up with the news." My father, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke, his gaze sharp. "This family doesn't have time to follow frivolous things. We're busy with real work." I let out a soft laugh. "Then maybe you should start paying attention, because it seems like my frivolous work is gaining the interest of some very important people." At that moment, a voice rang out from the main stage. "Please give a warm welcome to the Mayor of New York." The entire room turned toward the stage, and I froze as I saw Mayor Robert Collins, one of the biggest supporters of my city park project, standing at the podium. "What a wonderful night to celebrate Ethan and Olivia," he began, his smile warm. "But before we continue, I'd like to take a moment to recognize someone special who is here tonight. A young talent who has completely transformed the landscape of this city." I felt the entire family table stiffen. "Emma Walker." All eyes turned to me as he gestured toward my seat. Emma is the designer behind the stunning transformation of our Central Park, a project that has redefined urban green spaces. She has brought artistry into every detail, turning it into a new symbol of the city. Applause erupted across the ballroom. I couldn't let this moment pass. Standing up, I walked toward the mayor, shaking his hand as my family watched in stunned silence. After offering a few words of gratitude, I returned to my table where my parents and Ethan still sat, visibly shaken. My mother finally spoke, her voice quieter than usual. "Emma, you actually did it." I met her gaze for the first time in my life, unafraid. "I did, and I don't need anyone's approval to know that." Ethan gripped his wine glass tightly, clearly trying to mask his discomfort. Olivia whispered something in his ear, her expression irritated. I lifted my glass slightly, smirking. "Congratulations, Ethan, and congratulations to the whole family, because now you can no longer dismiss the gardening girl." I turned and walked away, leaving them to stew in their own humiliation. My phone rang late in the afternoon while I was reviewing the design plans for a new project. I glanced at the screen. "Mom." I hesitated. The last time we spoke was at Ethan's wedding, and the conversation had been far from pleasant, but I couldn't pretend she didn't exist. Taking a deep breath, I answered the call. "Emma, I love you." Her voice was overly cheerful, so much so that it immediately put me on guard. "I'm so proud of you. I've been reading so many articles about your achievements lately. Who would have thought my little girl would become so successful?" I stayed silent for a few seconds, trying to decipher what game she was playing. My parents had never cared about my work, at least not until it became valuable to them. Leaning back in my chair, I kept my voice neutral. "I thought our family didn't have time to follow frivolous things like this?" Mom laughed, but I could hear the tension beneath it. "Oh, you know me. I just wanted to make sure you were doing well. Anyway, why don't you come home for a visit? It's been so long since we all sat down together." I frowned. Things couldn't have been more obvious. "There must be a reason you suddenly want to see me, right?" I asked bluntly. Mom hesitated for a few seconds before letting out a nervous chuckle. "What are you talking about, Emma?" "I just want the family to be closer again." I shook my head even though she couldn't see it. I don't have time, Mom. You say you want to make amends, but I remember very well who pushed me out of this family in the first place. Before she could say anything else, I hung up. 3 days later, as I was tending to Grandma Margaret's garden, a knock sounded at the door. Wiping my hands on my jeans, I walked over and opened it. Ethan stood there, hands in his pockets, looking uncomfortable. I crossed my arms, leaning against the door frame. What now? He took a deep breath, trying to keep his voice casual. I just wanted to check in on you. I scoffed. You've never cared about that before. Ethan bit his lip, then sighed. Emma, I know I haven't been a great brother, but the restaurant business is struggling. Mom and Dad are under a lot of financial pressure. I know you're successful. I waited for him to finish. Can you help us out a little? A cold fury spread through me. So this was why they had reached out, not because they cared, but because they thought I could be useful to them now. I folded my arms tighter, locking eyes with him. Do you remember, Ethan, when I needed just a little bit of support from the family? What did everyone do? Dad cut me off financially, Mom mocked my career path, and you? I let out a short laugh. You ridiculed me every chance you got. Ethan looked away. I continued. But I'm not here to hold grudges. I just want to make one thing clear. I am not this family's wallet. You all made your choices and I made mine. I built everything on my own without anyone's help, and now I owe no one anything. Ethan clenched his fists, looking like he wanted to argue, but then he simply exhaled and averted his gaze. I took a step forward, my voice firm. You can leave now. Ethan opened his mouth as if to say something, but in the end, he just gave a small nod and walked away. I shut the door, leaning against it. A soft breeze swept through the garden, rustling the leaves of the plants I had nurtured for so long. For the first time in my life, I truly felt free. I had never imagined a day when I could feel this light. After that encounter with Ethan, there were no more calls from Mom, no more messages from Dad. No one showed up at my doorstep with fake sentiments about family and unity. They had finally understood I was no longer the weak girl they could control, and I had no regrets. I devoted myself entirely to my work, the one thing that had never betrayed me. My new landscape design project was gaining attention in the architectural world, attracting bigger clients and more valuable contracts. But most importantly, I was doing what I loved every single day, free from judgment. Grandma Margaret's house had been completely transformed. I had turned the garden into something special, a place full of life with the flowers she loved, the trees I had planted with my own hands, and carefully designed stone pathways. It was no longer just a garden. It was a part of me. It was where I belonged. One spring morning I stepped outside, taking a deep breath of the crisp air, feeling the warm sunlight filtering through the trees. The sound of birds chirping echoed in the breeze, blending with the gentle rustling of leaves. I reached out and touched a sprig of lavender, memories of my childhood flooding back. Days spent sitting on the porch with Grandma, our hands covered in dirt yet our hearts lighter than ever. As long as you know where you belong, you will find your path. Her words still echoed in my mind, but now I was no longer searching for the answer. I already knew where I belonged. No more restaurants, no more tense family dinners, no more condescending looks or mocking remarks. There was only me and the dream I had turned into reality. A soft breeze swept through, carrying the delicate scent of flowers. I closed my eyes, feeling every breath of nature around me. For the first time in my life, I was truly happy and free. Emma's story is not just about following a passion. It is a powerful reminder of the value of independence and perseverance. In reality, many people are bound by family expectations, pressured to walk a path that was never meant for them. But true success does not come from pleasing others. It comes from having the courage to choose your own way and relentlessly pursuing it. Sometimes, to find happiness, we must be willing to let go of toxic relationships and build the life we truly want.